The Shadows of Ravenwood. Segment 1. The Invitation. It was a dreary, overcast afternoon when I, Emily Green, received a peculiar letter in the mail. The envelope was old-fashioned, sealed with red wax, and addressed to me in elegant handwriting. Inside, the letter was an invitation to the grand reopening of Ravenwood Manor, an old mansion on the outskirts of town that had been abandoned for decades. The letter was signed by a distant relative, Victoria Ravenswood, whom I had never met. Intrigued and a little skeptical, I decided to attend. Ravenwood Manor had always been shrouded in mystery and whispered rumors of hauntings. As a writer of supernatural fiction, I couldn't resist the opportunity to explore such an infamous location. The drive to Ravenwood Manor was eerie. The road was narrow and winding, flanked by dense woods that seemed to swallow the light. As I approached the manor, I saw it looming in the distance, a massive Gothic structure with tall spires and dark, foreboding windows. The iron gates creaked as I pushed them open, and the gravel path crunched under my feet as I walked towards the front door. Victoria greeted me warmly, her eyes bright with excitement. She was a striking woman, with sharp features and an air of mystery. "Welcome to Ravenwood Manor," she said. "Thank you for coming. I'm so glad you could make it." Couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as I stepped into the grand foyer. The interior was just as imposing as the exterior, with high ceilings, dark wood paneling, and a grand staircase that seemed to lead into the shadows. Candles flickered in the dim light, casting eerie shapes on the walls. Victoria led me to the drawing room, where a group of other guests had already gathered. They were all strangers to me, but Victoria introduced each one with a smile. There was Jonathan, a historian, Claire, an artist, Thomas, a professor, and Lydia, a medium. Each had been invited to the manor for their unique skills and interests. As we settled in, Victoria explained her purpose. Ravenwood Manor has a long and storied history, she began. It has been in my family for generations, but it has also been the source of many tragedies. I believe there is something here that needs to be uncovered, and I need your help to do it. The room fell silent as her words hung in the air. We all felt the weight of the past pressing down on us, and a sense of impending dread settled over the gathering. Segment 2. The first night. After a light dinner, Victoria showed us to our rooms. The manor was vast, with countless rooms and hallways that seemed to twist and turn in impossible ways. My room was on the second floor, overlooking the overgrown garden. It was a small, cozy space, but the shadows seemed to dance on the walls in the flickering candlelight. As night fell, the manor grew colder. I wrapped myself in a blanket and tried to sleep, but a sense of unease kept me awake. Around midnight, I heard faint whispers echoing through the halls. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but the voices grew louder and more distinct. Curiosity got the better of me, and I grabbed a flashlight and ventured out into the hallway. The old wood creaked under my feet, and the air was thick with the scent of dust and decay. The whisperers seemed to be coming from the end of the hall, near an old locked door. I reached the door and pressed my ear against it. The voices were clearer now, speaking in hushed tones, but I couldn't make out the words. I tried the handle, but it was locked tight. Just as I was about to give up and return to my room, the whispers stopped abruptly, and I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. I spun around, but there was no one there. My heart pounded in my chest as I backed away from the door and hurried back to my room. I locked the door behind me and crawled back into bed, pulling the covers up to my chin. The whispers had stopped, but the feeling of being watched lingered. The next morning, I joined the others for breakfast in the dining room. The atmosphere was tense, and it was clear that I wasn't the only one who had experienced something strange during the night. Jonathan mentioned hearing footsteps outside his door, while Claire had seen a shadowy figure moving through the garden. Victoria listened to our stories with a grave expression. "The spirits of Ravenwood Manor are restless," she said. "We must find a way to uncover the truth and put them to rest." Segment 3. The investigation begins. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, we split up to explore different parts of the manor. Jonathan and Thomas headed to the library to search for historical records, while Claire and Lydia went to the garden to see if they could sense any spiritual presence. Victoria and I decided to investigate the locked room where I had heard the whispers. Victoria led me through the winding hallways, her lantern casting long shadows on the walls. As we approached the door, I felt a chill run down my spine. Victoria produced an old, ornate key and unlocked the door. It creaked open, revealing a small, dusty room filled with old furniture and cobwebs. In the center of the room was a large wooden chest. It looked ancient, with intricate carvings and a heavy padlock. Victoria and I exchanged a glance before she handed me the key. My hands trembled as I inserted it into the lock and turned it. The padlock clicked open, and inside the chest were a collection of old letters, photographs, and a leather-bound journal. The letters were fragile and yellowed with age, written in a flowing script. The photographs were faded, but I could make out the faces of a family, parents, and 2 children. The journal belonged to Victoria's great-grandmother, Eleanor Ravenswood. We carefully laid out the contents of the chest and began to read through the journal. Eleanor's entries detailed her life at Ravenwood Manor, her love for her family, and the strange occurrences that had plagued the house. She wrote about hearing voices, seeing apparitions, and feeling a malevolent presence. One entry stood out among the rest. Eleanor described a night when she had discovered a hidden room in the basement. Inside, she found evidence of dark rituals and strange symbols etched into the walls. She believed that these rituals had unleashed a dark force that haunted the manor. Victoria and I knew we had to find that hidden room. We gathered the others and shared our findings. Jonathan had discovered references to a secret society that had once operated in the area, performing occult rituals. Thomas had found old blueprints of the manor that hinted at a hidden basement room. Armed with this new information, we descended into the basement, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. The air grew colder the deeper we went, and the sense of dread intensified. We finally found a hidden door behind a stack of old crates. It was heavy and old, but with some effort, we managed to push it open. Segment 4. The Hidden Room. The hidden room was exactly as Eleanor had described it. The walls were covered in strange symbols, and the floor was stained with what looked like dried blood. In the center of the room was an altar, surrounded by burnt-out candles and other ritualistic objects. The air was thick with the scent of decay and something far more sinister. Lydia stepped forward, her eyes closed as she tried to sense the spiritual energy in the room. "There's a powerful presence here," she said. "Something dark and ancient. It's been trapped here for a long time." As we explored the room, we found more evidence of the dark rituals that had been performed there. There were old books filled with spells and incantations, and a diary belonging to the leader of the secret society. The diary detailed their attempts to summon and control a powerful entity, but something had gone horribly wrong. The rituals had backfired, unleashing the entity upon Ravenwood Manor. It had been feeding off the fear and suffering of the inhabitants ever since. The diary mentioned a way to banish the entity, but it required a ritual to be performed by someone with a strong connection to the manor. Victoria volunteered to perform the ritual. As a descendant of the Ravenswood family, she believed she had the best chance of succeeding. We gathered the necessary ingredients and prepared for the ritual that night. We returned to the hidden room as the sun set, the air growing colder and the sense of dread more palpable. Victoria stood at the altar, her hands trembling as she began to recite the incantation. The candles flickered, and the symbols on the walls seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. As the ritual progressed, the room grew darker, and we could feel the entity's presence growing stronger. Shadows writhed on the walls, and a deep, guttural voice echoed through the room. Victoria's voice grew louder, more determined, as she continued the incantation. Suddenly, a violent wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles and plunging us into darkness. The entity's voice grew louder, filled with rage and desperation. We huddled together, our hearts pounding, as we waited for the ritual to take effect. Segment 5. The Confrontation. Victoria's voice rose above the howling wind, her incantation reaching a crescendo. The room shook, and the symbols on the walls pulsed with a sinister energy. We could feel the entity's anger and fear as it fought against the ritual's power. Suddenly, the wind stopped, and the room fell silent. For a moment, we thought the ritual had failed. But then, a blinding light filled the room, and we saw the entity for the first time. It was a shadowy figure, its form constantly shifting and writhing. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and its mouth twisted into a silent scream. Victoria stood her ground, her eyes locked on the entity. "You have no power here," she said, her voice steady and strong. "Return to the darkness from which you came." The entity let out a final, ear-piercing scream before it was consumed by the light. The shadows writhed and twisted before finally dissipating into nothingness. The room fell silent once more, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. We helped Victoria down from the altar, her face pale but determined. "It's over," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The entity is gone." As we left the hidden room, we could feel a change in the manor. The air was lighter, and the sense of dread that had plagued us was gone. We knew that Ravenwood Manor was finally free from the darkness that had haunted it for so long. Over the next few days, we continued to explore the manor, uncovering more of its history and secrets. The spirits that had once been trapped and tormented were now at peace, and we could feel their gratitude. Victoria decided to stay at Ravenwood Manor, determined to restore it to its former glory. The rest of us returned to our lives, but we knew we would always be connected by the events that had transpired there. Segment 6. The Aftermath. A few weeks after the ritual, I received another letter from Victoria. She had made significant progress in restoring the manor, and she wanted to thank us for our help. She invited us to visit again, this time to see the manor in its new, restored state. When I arrived at Ravenwood Manor, I was amazed at the transformation. The gardens had been cleared and replanted, the walls had been cleaned and repaired, and the rooms were filled with light and warmth. The oppressive atmosphere was gone, replaced by a sense of peace and serenity. Victoria greeted me with a smile, her eyes bright with happiness. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I wanted you to see what you've helped achieve." We spent the day exploring the restored manor, marveling at the changes. The hidden room in the basement had been sealed off, and the objects we had found there had been carefully preserved and stored away. The library had been organized, and the old books and journals had been cataloged. As we sat in the drawing room that evening, Victoria shared her plans for the future. "I want to turn Ravenwood Manor into a place where people can come to learn about its history and the events that transpired here," she said. "I want to honor the memory of my ancestors and ensure that their story is never forgotten." Was touched by her dedication and determination. Ravenwood Manor had been a place of darkness and fear for so long, but now it was a place of light and hope. The events we had experienced there had brought us together, and we would always be connected by the bonds we had formed. As I prepared to leave the next day, I took one last look at Ravenwood Manor. The sun was rising, casting a golden light over the gardens and the old stone walls. I felt a sense of closure and peace, knowing that the manor was finally free from the shadows of its past. The drive back to my home was peaceful, and I couldn't help but reflect on the events that had brought me to Ravenwood Manor. It had been a journey filled with fear and uncertainty, but it had also been a journey of discovery and healing. The spirits of the manor were finally at peace, and so was I. And so, the story of Ravenwood Manor came to an end, not with a scream or a shadow, but with the soft, gentle light of a new beginning. The manor stood as a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of hope and redemption. It was a place where the past and present coexisted, where the living and the dead could find peace and understanding. Ravenwood Manor had been reborn, and its story would live on, a reminder of the darkness that once was and the light that now is.